Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Time is 3:01. Welcome to the study session of the Board of Trustees of St. Helena Unified School District. Today is Thursday, April 11th, 2019. I'm Jeff Conwell, Board President. I'd like to introduce my fellow trustees, Lisa Pelosi, Jeannie Kerr, Maria Haug, and Julio Guin. I'd also like to welcome our district and site administrators. Thank you very much for being here. I'd also like to introduce Lauren Sukup. Hello, Lauren. She is legal counsel for school and college legal services. Copy of this board meeting video will be available at our website at www.stlenaunified.org. Let's see. Okay. I'm on to item number 2. Is there a motion to approve today's study session agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So this brings us up to item number 4, which is public comment on items not on the agenda. Does anybody wish to speak about something that's not on the agenda today? Okay. Before I go to our let's see, board number 5, which is board-related items, just want to clarify, if you'd like to speak today during public comment, what we're going to do is, because we have legal counsel here, she is going to give us the brief. I'm going to ask administrators and trustees if you guys have questions at all, but not actually to go into any comments or anything like that. And then we'll kind of recap at the end. And prior to recapping, if there's anybody who wishes to make a public comment or something to the board, at that point they'll be allowed to speak on this matter. Everybody comfortable with that?
Yeah, so just questions then from
Yeah,
us.
so if any,
okay,
and same with our administration, if anybody has any questions, please. I assume, Lauren, that's all fair game to stop. Okay. All right, so those in the audience kind of understand. I'll be sure to let you know when, if you would like to address the board. Okay, thank you. Item 5A, which is report on student enrollment study, interdistrict attendance, school district of choice, related board policies, and draft attendance resolution. Dr. Maribel Lewis, would you like to introduce?
It would be my pleasure. Thank you for being here, board members. This is an opportunity for us to dig a little bit deeper into our district of choice option that we use as our primary method for enrolling students who attend outside of our district, and to understand better how district of choice and interdistrict transfers work both legally and then logistically. In order to begin that conversation, we thought it would be helpful for you first to get an update on the demographics and the enrollment study that Andy had conducted most recently. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Andy first for a few minutes as she updates us on enrollment, and then soon thereafter Lauren will take the floor and provide us with some really good information around district of choice and interdistrict transfers. Ms. Stubbs?
Thank you. And so we conducted an enrollment study back in 2017. We commissioned one from Decision Insight. And so their general conclusion was that over time we'd see a slight decline in enrollment due to our incoming kindergarten students. And so what they really look at there was the birth rate to kindergarten enrollment ratio. And then in 2018-19, the school year, we actually saw an influx of enrollment, mainly due to families moving into the area from other places. And so as you can see there, our enrollment from 17-18 to 18-19 grew by about 80 students. And those enrollment figures that you see there include our current district of choice students also. And so because of that influx, we had Jack Schrader and Associates, who's been doing some other work for us, provide us with some updated enrollment projections. And they looked at all the same things that Decision Insight did, but this time around they included data on the new families moving in, and then also some new residential development information since the 2017 study was done. And their full report is included in the board agenda. And so their conclusion in their look at our enrollment is that district enrollment will begin to decline. We'll see an increase over the next couple of years, but then it will begin to decline again in 2021 and 22 as smaller kindergarten cohorts enter the district. So that aligns a little bit with the Decision Insight study that was done. And so the table that you see here includes all of our current district of choice students that are enrolled as of this year, and then carrying those cohorts through in the subsequent years, but it doesn't show new incoming district of choice students in the projection because we wanted the board to be able to see the implications of enrollment trends based on who we have in our seats right now. And so with that, I would ask if the board had any questions about this particular data.
One other highlight I thought besides the students moving into the area, the original projection was done not knowing that the Catholic school would be closing.
Yes, that's correct.
And so basically they're projecting us to be over cap in several grades for the next few years.
Yes, and for example, you might notice that in 18-19, we have for this year we have 88 kinders, and then when that cohort moves into first grade in 19-20, you see that that jumps up to 100, and that's because that actually mirrors kind of the trend from previous years where we've seen some growth from kinder to first grade, and the demographer felt that that was indicative of the trend that the city's recognizing too, that new families with younger students are moving into the district. And so they felt that that was a good, we'll likely see that again for next year.
Trustees, any other questions from Ms. Stubbs? Okay. Thank you.
All right, I'm always so afraid of these microphones. But let me know if you can't hear me. Good afternoon. My name is Lauren Sukup, and I am an attorney at School and College Legal Services. Thank you for having me here. And Dr. Wilson and I have been working together to try and prepare this information for you. Thank you. And I will be kind of bouncing between the packet that you have in front of you and the PowerPoint on the screen, which is also included in this packet. So I'd like to start with just to look at the resolution. That is a draft resolution, and unfortunately we did not page number these, but it comes right after the enrollment information. And this resolution is intended to, is presented to the board in draft form, and one, it summarizes what the board has done to date. But it also addresses the impacts of the change in policy and the discussion that the board has had around how it would like to address the students who are currently attending the district who may fall outside of the inter-district policy moving forward after July 1st of 2019. And I think this is a good place to start because this is sort of what when I first spoke to Dr. Wilson, this was what I was presented with, and some of the conversations that we had were around these initial discussions that you were having. And I was asked to look at your current policies. And of course, as oftentimes when you ask legal counsel to review policies and decisions being made, we raise all sorts of other red flags that we see through that review. And I apologize if you feel like I'm side talking to you. I would like, part of this presentation is to address some of those concerns that I have about your current practices and policies, but to also go over what your current attendance options are. how you're currently implementing those, just so that we are all on the same page as to what the law provides and what the requirements are for each of those attendance options. And feel free to jump in here at any point in time if I'm missing something. So concerning the resolution, the purpose, like I said, the purpose of this resolution was to address the impact of the decision to revise the board policy concerning interdistrict attendance, and to specifically address the provision around the avid tutor, children of avid tutors, and that those children would no longer be, new students would no longer be enrolled under your interdistrict transfer policy and would have to go through the district of choice process. And this resolution hopefully memorializes your intention to address those students that are currently, for the 18-19 year, enrolled in your district as children of avid tutors, and that you would like to allow those students to continue to enroll in the district through grade 12. And so that is what this resolution does. It does specifically provide that those children will only remain eligible to stay within the district if they meet the 4 criteria on the second page of the resolution. The first one being that they are required to apply through the District of Choice program annually, and if they are enrolled and selected through that process, that they will become a District of Choice child at that point. The second is that they must annually apply for interdistrict transfer, a transfer permit, and that they are would be run through that permit process annually as well. They must be in compliance with your interdistrict transfer policy and must be in compliance with any revocation or other criteria that you have set forth in your policy. They would be subject to all of that. And then this resolution also acknowledges that siblings of current students who are enrolled would not be eligible to come under this exception, that it simply is going to be those actual students who are enrolled in your district this school year. So that leads to our discussion around the changes in the policies that took place. And I think probably what I'll do is go into the student attendance options, kind of give an overview of that first, and then we can talk about the new changes that I am proposing to some of your policies. So the looking at the PowerPoint, there are 3 areas we're going to cover: district of choice, interdistrict transfers, and then Allen bill or employment transfers. So currently, as you all are aware, your district is a district of choice, and that is a optional provision in the Ed Code that allows school districts to elect to become a district of choice through a resolution, and that you remain a district of choice until you adopt a resolution to decide not to be a district of choice any longer. This law was recently revised, and as part of that, it is set to become inoperative on July 1st of 2023. So that is a ways off. A lot can happen between now and then, but I think it is important to note that the financing mechanism that was initially built into the district of choice, primarily for basic aid districts, they have significantly reduced that, and I think there's becoming less and less support for this admission process. So I will not be surprised if this attendance option goes away. But like I said, they may just significantly revise it to really close some of the concerns that the legislature has had around these laws. So under the District of Choice program, the district is required to accept all students who apply until the school is at capacity in the grade level capacities that is set annually. The district is required to use an unbiased process, such as a lottery, to randomly select students for enrollment if there are more applicants than seats. The communications to parents and students concerning the District of Choice program must be factually accurate, cannot target certain students based on academic, athletic skill, or other personal characteristics. And no student who physically resides within the district can be forced out of a school to make room for a district of choice students. So under the code, priority enrollment is given to three groups of students. The first being siblings of children already in attendance in the district. The second to children eligible for free and reduced meals. And the third is to children of military personnel. And this was part of the recent revisions that happened to this section. They added these priorities. So as you'll see in the policy, we've updated your policy to reflect these priorities that must be given. The district can't prohibit a transfer if the cost to educate the student would exceed the amount of additional state aid received. And this is something, when I talk about inter-district transfers, that is a difference between district of choice and inter-district transfers. The district can deny, however, a transfer if the transfer would require the district to create a new program to serve the student, but they specifically have carved out special education and English learners as outside of that exception. So, which are, usually the two that primarily districts would have to create a new program for. And the application process has very strict timelines, and they have made those timelines even more strict, and I have updated your policy to reflect those new timelines. But they have made it very clear that districts, who are districts of choice, must comply with these timelines, and that final decision for admission has to be made by May 15th. So once a student is enrolled in a district of choice, they become a resident of that district for all intents and purposes. And even if the district decides to withdraw as a district of choice, the district must still allow students to attend through, or 11th and 12th grade students that are entering 11th and 12th grade to finish those years. And let's see, the district it basically treats these students, like I said, as residents. So the revocation of these students, unlike inter-district transfer, where the district can set revocation grounds that are different than just discipline, expulsions, district of choice, you can only remove these students through the expulsion process. There are no appeal rights for students if they're denied under the district of choice process. Unlike the inter-district transfer, where you can appeal to the county board, district of choice does not allow for appeal rights to the county board. So moving on to inter-district transfers. So this district is unique in that it is a district of choice, but that it has elected to also allow for inter-district transfers in extraordinary circumstances. And the law doesn't speak to this. So the law does not expressly permit this practice, but it also doesn't prohibit this practice. So our recommendation as an office has been that districts may base districts of choice may use the inter-district transfer and admit a student under that process in very unique and strictly construed circumstances. And one of the concerns that was a flag for me in reviewing your policies was specifically that. That the law treats these as two very different attendance mechanisms, and it is implied that if you're a district of choice, you are not to use, you're not to accept students into your district under other transfer means. So when we go over the policy, you'll see that I have tightened that up extensively to have just very specific circumstances under which a student would be allowed to come into your district under an inter-district transfer process, and to use the district of choice process as your primary process for accepting students. And I think from a legal, from a legal perspective, this is strongly recommended because of the concern that there could be challenges to the process by using both. So again, I'll get into more details on that. But because of that, you do have two policies. You have a district of choice set of policies, and then you have an inter-district transfer set of policies, which makes it really fun to confuse things. But because of that, I'm going to go over the inter-district process because you do have those policies, and if you choose to continue to allow inter-district transfers, you will still have to comply with this process for those unique circumstances for particular students. So under the inter-district transfer process, it allows two school districts to enter into an attendance agreement for the transfer of students. Usually, some districts do it as a master agreement or a countywide agreement where the districts enter into. We'll all defer to our own policies on this and accept each other's students subject to our policies. And then an inter-district attendance permit will be approved by both districts, and that's usually an annual agreement. It can be for longer, but most common years is an annual renewal. And the attendance agreements are required by law to set forth the terms and conditions under which the inter-district attendance will be permitted, how it will be, what grounds you'll deny the inter-district transfer on, how you can revoke the inter-district transfer. So you're supposed to set forth your own district standards for what those are. And the law requires certain priorities, but it does not set forth other specifics around this. So this is very much a district decision. I will say that obviously it needs to be objective, and I have opinions about certain criteria that districts choose to use, because I think some are more risky than others and may lead to potential discrimination claims. But generally speaking, this criteria can be district developed and specific to the district. Under the code, once an inter-district permit is granted and the student is enrolled, the district of enrollment must allow the student to continue attending school without having to apply unless the attendance agreement requires that. And so that was what I was saying, is yours requires an annual application, and that is what students are required to comply with. Without an attendance agreement, the law precludes both district of residence and district of enrollment from requiring students to reapply annually. Regardless of the existence of an attendance agreement between the districts, neither district may rescind existing inter-district transfer permits for students entering grades 11th and 12th. And if the district denies an inter-district transfer, parents have appeal rights to the county board, as I previously mentioned. Okay, and last but not least, employment transfers and Allen bills. So I'm going to go over this briefly with you just so you know this is another option, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about how this, I revised your Allen bill policy, and so I'll give you kind of the reasonings behind those revisions. So under the Allen bill, if at least one parent, well, I'll start by saying this is not a transfer. It's kind of one of the most commonly mistaken components of this Allen bill, is that it lives within the residency section of the Education Code. And it is grounds in which a district can, but is not required, to consider a student a resident of the district. So it's not considered a transfer. It doesn't fall within either of the other transfer options I just spoke to you about. If the district chooses to allow students whose parents are employed in the district to attend school, they are deeming those students residents under the law. And they basically are treated as if they live physically within the boundaries of your district. So what the code specifically says is that if one parent is physically employed within the district and works at least 10 hours per week within the district, the student may be considered a resident. This can be modified and limited to, for example, just district employees. And it can be so that just district employees' children could be considered residents of the school district. Denial of enrollment must be based on objective, non-arbitrary criteria, such as cost of educating the student would be more than the funds received, or capacity program limitations. So it does allow for more flexibility in that regard. Once admitted, a student's transfer may only be revoked if the parent ceases to be employed in the district, or if obviously the student is expelled from the district. The student shall not be required to reapply annually, and there is no appeal process if it is denied. However, if the district that declines enrollment, the district that declines enrollment must provide the parents with written explanation for the basis for their denial. So I think that is, that's the end of the slide. So that's an overview of the law. And so I'd like to refer you first to your board policies. Let's see. Let's start with let's go to your board policy 5117. And I forgot to ask you, Dr. Wilson, but there were two versions in there of this, and I didn't know if we dated them on the top because I didn't know if there was a specific reason for that. I'll work off of the most recent version if.
We are looking at the ones that we have got some recommendations, correct?
Correct,
So
yes.
you're looking at 32719?
Yes.
That would be the most current
Yeah.
one.
Yep. Okay. So that's what I will work off. The one that's dated 32719. So BP and AR 5117 are your district of choice policies. And in board policy 5117, I updated some of the dates in this policy, but I also added a provision in here about the school district of choice ceasing to exist, either through board action or changes in the law, that students would be permitted to remain in the district through the highest grade level to, if this were to occur. And again, like I said, 2023 is a ways off, but I do feel like if the board were to take action before that, this policy would address that concern. And then looking at Administrative Regulation 5117, this one has quite extensive revisions to it, as you can see. Most of these are updated to reflect the changes in the law. And they are primarily to address the new priorities that I discussed, those 3 priorities, and then to just discuss or set forth the process and the timelines that are updated in the code. And then board policy 5117.1. So these are your inter-district transfer policy and regulation. And these policies, like I said, need to remain in place because they are what you would follow if you did allow for an inter-district transfer student to be enrolled in the district. But the significant change that's made in here is that there are we've removed, or my recommendation is to remove, let's see. Yeah. My apologies here. I'm just looking to see. We may have left out 5117.1 AR. Is it in the board packet? Oh yeah, it is. It's 1111.1. Yeah, So it may be, yeah, there, it's up on the screen, and it's in the board packet. So the AR is the one that I made some pretty extensive and probably the most impactful changes to, and that is in regards to what is considered an extraordinary circumstance for an interdistrict transfer. So just as a reminder, the way your policy was previously written is that you allowed children of certificated or classified employees to enroll under the interdistrict transfer.
Lauren?
Yes.
Currently, it says regular.
Regular. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So effective July 1st, 2019 is the language that was previously up there that's struck that says the certificated or classified employees. To allow a high school senior to attend the same school he or she attended as a junior if they move out of the district during the junior year. To allow children attended, to allow attendance of siblings of students admitted through the district of choice process. To allow attendance of children of military personnel and other reasons pertaining to unique student or family welfare. So, as I previously mentioned, the code and the law anticipates that interdistrict transfer process is used in very unique and very specific circumstances. And based on that, my recommendation is that the district simply allow the interdistrict transfer process through the state mandated priority, which is number 1 up there that I've added, when the student has been determined by staff of either the district of residence or district of proposed attendance to be a victim of sexual assault or an act of bullying as defined in the education code. And that the second extraordinary circumstance be to allow the attendance of high school seniors to attend whose parents have moved out of the district during their junior year. My recommendation concerning to address the enrollment of employees, students, or children, is to bring those under the Allen Bill and to have your Allen Bill policy reflect, because you currently do not allow enrollment of students, you don't consider students of individuals who are employed within the district boundaries as residents of your district. That is not a part of your current policy. So as you can see in the 511.1, which I have included in here, I would recommend that that policy be revised to specifically allow for students of certificated and classified employees of the district who work at least 10 hours a week for the district to be considered residents of the district. So that is my recommendation from a legal perspective. Obviously, I understand to some extent the impact and the practical application of that. And I speak primarily from a risk liability standpoint. And I think that there are options and discussions that can take place that may take pieces of what I have said and address them to fit what your specific district needs. And I understand that the board has the ability to, similar to what with the AVID tutors, has the ability to allow students to continue to attend in the district under your current policies through grade 12, given that the changes to these policies, could have potentially significant impacts. Are there any other items that you would like me to talk about?
We might want to talk a little bit about the resolution and the impact that may occur as a result of removing the siblings of district of choice.
Yes.
And why you see that as a risk.
Yes. So so similar to with the AVID tutors, if the board decided that it would, understandably, the changes, my recommended changes have impacts in that it would potentially remove quite a few students who are currently enrolled in the district from the district. And so similar to what was done with the AVID tutors, siblings of district of choice children, for example, a resolution could be drafted to address that situation and allowing those students to remain within the district through grade 12, provided that they meet certain criteria in the district. And again, the concern that I have around keeping district of choice siblings in as an extraordinary circumstance under the interdistrict transfer is that it's not an extraordinary circumstance. And it isn't a situation which generally as a category can be considered significant enough to use that transfer process outside of the district of choice process. Does that address? Okay. And we can, it would be simple enough to draft up a resolution to really address any criteria that the board feels it would like to see put in place if it chooses to move forward with the policy changes. Any questions? Questions from administrators?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Why don't you go to Erica's microphone just so that it gets it is heard through the video stream?
I'm just clarifying. So since we're district of choice, theoretically, if a student who was extremely high needs special ed student, perhaps even somebody at a non-public, got in the lottery and was drawn, then that would become our financial liability, because if I understood, district of choice doesn't allow us to say it costs more than, but the other ones do. Correct.
Yes. So it doesn't allow for the exception of special ed and
Right.
English learners. So
Okay.
yes, and the facts that you presented, obviously, there may be potentially other criteria that would not allow it, but just under cost or program, that's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just on the residency based on employment portion, minimum of 10 hours during the school week, shouldn't that be clearer that it's throughout the school year? Because there might be a portion of the year where it's 10 hours a week, and should we tighten that up a little bit?
Yeah, so the again, the code provides the 10 hours. That is something that the district can look to modify and also clarify as to specifically what does that mean. I think the code anticipates that it is a 10 hours per week, all year, but obviously we have employees that don't work, 10 hours every single week. So yes, we can clarify that and make it specific to what the board would like. Yeah, it does reference school week, so I think it does assume that it's any week in which the school is in session. Yeah.
Question is just clarifying as well. If I understood correctly, that all certificated and classified employee situations with potential students is now going to be addressed under just the Allen bill, nowhere else. Is that correct?
That is my recommendation.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
I guess I'd like to tag onto that same question. So does it behoove a employee if we do this and do an Allen bill, to still put their children in for district of choice? So, yeah.
So I think if that's something you want to look at doing, I think more conversation needs to happen around that, because just like the AVID tutors, you have kids that are currently enrolled as interdistrict transfer students who are employees' kids, and you will have a choice whether to keep those kids as interdistrict kids through their highest grade level and just start accepting new employees' children under Allen bill, or whether you want to transfer them all over into Allenville with the requirement that they first apply through the district of choice, or a combination of those things. So there are some options here in how that transition would look like and how immediate you'd like that to be. And also any parameters that you would like that transfer option, that you want to put around that. And I keep calling it a transfer option. It's not a transfer option. It's an admission option as a resident. Yeah.
Okay, and basically with that, the parents, the advantage to being district of choice is if they no longer are employed by the district and they're under district of choice, the children will be allowed to stay here at school. If they, for some reason, were to leave the area under the Allen bill, the children at the same time would also.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And one additional, then with the Allen bill, there is no financial funds following the child, whereas district of choice there is.
Correct. And I don't know, we haven't spoken a whole lot about the financial piece of this. I don't know what an impact that has, but yes, you're correct.
Andy, you want to give a brief summary of the financial impacts of district of choice and how monies are received?
We receive currently approximately $130,000 from District of Choice funding, and so that comes to us from other District of Choice students who come from non-basic aid districts, and that funding has been greatly reduced with this last legislation. Yeah.
So, and I'm sorry, so how much per student would that be then? Would you say then how much are we? Is it like 7,000?
Approximately, yeah. I'd have to go back and do some analysis,
okay,
yeah.
Okay.
It's roughly 25% of the ADA that the school district receives from the state based on average daily attendance. 25%, correct, Andy?
Correct, yes.
Okay, perfect. And as far as the interdistrict transfers, when you mentioned something where you would have like a memorandum or something with the district or with the county, would a district who is where the student is transferring from District A into ours as an interdistrict transfer, would they be able to deny that transfer due to their financial instability?
So currently there isn't a restriction for financial reasons. Okay. What they do have is a restriction on the percentage of kids that have left their district under that process. And I believe it's 10%, but it is kind of a convoluted calculation that they have to do unique to their district. And then there's some desegregation and other criteria that a district could deny a student leaving on. But they're very unique, and I don't see them being used very often because they don't happen very often, unless there's quite a few children leaving a particular district.
Okay. And then my next question is more of a procedural question. When we're talking about the priority for transfer under the school district of choice, it's the first priority to the siblings, second to free and reduced price meal students, and then third to the military. Now, how is that priority giving if it's an unbiased selection?
So it's a very good question. It's something we should ask our legislators. So the way I have seen it done is that basically on the application, the student's application, they indicate whether they are one of those three priorities. That priority gets put into that pot, and then priority one gets drawn, and then depending on obviously how many numbers of students there are, and then you go to the next priority. So it is an unbiased process in that it is random, and you are not selecting particular types of students to enroll, but you are by law, within those priorities that the legislature has decided you should be biased towards.
So basically, I think we brought this up in the policy committee. We would be having in the future we would be having 4 lotteries for each grade.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure exactly how it gets done. I know you asked that question about that process, and I gave them the answer they didn't want to hear. But it is going to take a separate process for those priorities. And I'd have to double check, but it may be, I know some districts with priorities put like 3 or, like 4 of one student number in for if they're priority 1, and then 3 of that student number in the pot if they're priority 2. So the odds are favored towards them, but then they hold just one lottery for all the slots. So I think that that's an option for you. I don't know specifics, but it's something we could look into if that would simplify things.
It's going to take a lot of lottery balls.
No, go ahead.
I had a question about this AR 5117.1 about striking to allow the attendance of siblings of students. So that's your recommendation. And you said that if the board decided to change that policy, obviously it would affect some of the students that are enrolled now. You said there would be a resolution that we could draw up for that? Or
yes. So similar to the sample or draft resolution that's included in your packet that addresses the AVID tutors, a similar resolution could be drafted for siblings of district of choice students to allow for those individuals to continue to enroll or continue to stay enrolled provided they meet certain criteria, such as applying for district of choice every year.
Okay.
Hasn't it been our practice that we've encouraged siblings that were under interdistrict transfers by having a sibling in district of choice that we wanted them to apply for district of choice, and sometimes that happened, but sometimes it didn't?
Correct. And this is a little bit out of the scope of this situation, but when we were, I believe it was the October meeting, when we were looking at our families who might be out of the district boundaries, would that be under any of these regulations as far as kind of the procedure and how we deal with that moving forward? Or, as far as, when are we going, when are we going to do the audit, and what happens to these students when we find that they're not in our district? Do they, when we ask them to leave, do they have until the end of the year? You know what I mean? That type of a thing.
I don't think we discussed any of that aspect at this point.
We didn't. I mean, I'm always a fan of putting things into policy, because then you have a process to rely upon, and it helps the family who this is affecting, that you can turn to that and say, yes, this is a policy we have in place, and this is what the steps we're going to take to address that. It doesn't feel subjective or that you're picking on them. So, yeah, we didn't discuss it, but I would recommend it.
Okay.
So maybe at this point, Lauren, if we could just take a little break, and if there's anybody who would like to make a public comment at all, this would be an opportunity to do so, and then I'm going to bring it back to the floor for more discussion. So anybody wish to make a public comment?
My name is Molly Bjorkman. I have 2 children currently enrolled. I have Maya in 1st grade. She is district of choice. And then I have my son Andreas in 3rd grade. And as I understand it, he was accepted through interdistrict transfer because my daughter was accepted in kindergarten, as I understand it. So I want to commiserate with the board. This is a very complicated policy, and I feel your pain in trying to work through this, because I know that there's a lot of emotion around this in the community. So I commiserate with you and going through this process. And I tried to follow as best I could, so I think I understand the legal ramifications. So I just wanted to make some notes about what I thought maybe was a point that I would like to share about extraordinary circumstances. So one of the reasons we looked at moving my daughter down here is my husband and I both work farther south of St. Helena. We work in Oakville and Rutherford. And my son was currently attending Calistoga, which is on a good day, with not a lot of traffic, maybe 40 minutes from us in work. And we both travel a fair amount. We are very involved in school volunteering, sports volunteering, and that's a fair commute is about 40 minutes. So, if the board should move to keep my daughter but have my son transfer out, which I realize is still a discussion, I'd just like to talk through that I feel would be an extraordinary circumstance on our family. I just think about my two children not getting to be together, they, not being at the same school, not getting to know each other for most of their day, not having overlap in friends. We would have 2 different PTA meetings to attend. Our nights and evenings are already very busy with sports. That would put additional stress on the family, which 2 working parents in an expensive valley with trying to juggle a lot of things, it's not a not stressful situation. Pick up and drop off, trying to rely on friends and family, picking up one child and having to pick up the other. I talked about sports, pick up, drop off, get to practice. That adds a whole new element when one is attending one school and one's attending another, both about 40 minutes away. Again, volunteering in classrooms. It's not an option for me to volunteer. When my child was in Calistoga, I had to take the whole day off pretty much. Closer here, could come for an hour and go back to work. And I wanted to comment that the legislature, when doing the biased, unbiased thing, they did do the line item for the siblings, and that was their first priority, to be biased for allowing a sibling in. So I think that the extraordinary circumstance or not extraordinary circumstances could potentially be argued. That's all I got. Thank you for the opportunity to address you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to public comment? And a reminder, 3 minutes. I was a little tardy with my thing, so please limit it to 3 minutes or less.
Hi, thank you for that. I have 2 kids. I'm Marian Garingelli. I live in Calistoga. We have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. They're both in daycare and preschool in St. Helena, Sun and Stars and Little Backpacks. And our daughter is on the waiting list for TK this year. So I'm very anxious to know what changes are going to be made. And also I want to know if anything is decided on the board, how quick it's going to be implied, and specifically, are the families on the waiting list going to be impacted right now for the coming school year? Do you know at this point if it's immediate or nobody?
The board has to, we have information tonight. We're going to bring it back most likely in May. And so I don't, certainly nothing is going to happen. We can't do anything until May. So right now we're learning as it goes. That would be the quickest that something might happen, would be in May.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And President Caldwell, if I may clarify, there is not an intention at this time for the district to move away from the district of choice process. And the applications that are currently on the wait list for the 1920 school year, we will be looking at the enrollment and applying the all of the requirements with regards to admitting students through district of choice at the May 15th date.
Good afternoon. I was wondering if I can get clarification on that sentence where it says that parents or guardian is physically employed within the district or by the district. Does it mean that my wife, for example, works at the Culinary Institute? Is that falling under that No, it's by the district, right?
Lauren, could you come back to the microphone and further describe the permissive aspect of the Allen Bill and what it can do and what we can choose to have it do?
Yes. So the way that the code is currently, what the code says is that it implies district boundaries. So it's written as parents who are physically employed within the district boundaries. As I mentioned, this is a permissive option for the district. They can elect to have that be a criteria in which they consider those children residents of their district. The other option is that because it is a permissive section, the district can revise that or narrow it to be just applicable to the children of district employees, not all employees employed within the district boundaries. So we're using the same terminology, but talking about two very different scopes of students that you would consider residents of the district. Does that clarify? Okay.
Any more public comment this time? Lauren, if you could just come back up and then be able just to assist us. So at this point, public comment will be closed. And so trustees, administrators, anybody, please, the study session. So we're just trying to learn a lot here. General questions or comments so far?
Maybe just to kind of go over from a historical perspective why I remember that we allowed originally siblings in under the interdistrict transfer, siblings of district of choice under district interdistrict transfer was because we didn't want to split up families. We understand that it's very important that that students go to school with their brothers and sisters. That's the ideal. I think that no one could argue with that. But we have to find a way to resolve the issues that we have, and it's not going to be easy. I don't know. I frankly don't know how we should go forward in this right now.
The challenge that the IDAs for siblings of DOC pose for us is that they've applied for district of choice also. And if we had room under CAP to enroll those students, we would. And so an equity question comes into play if we continue to enroll siblings and take us even further over CAP. Other students who are applying for district of choice will never have that opportunity to even be considered because we're moving well over CAP with siblings. And so that's the challenge that I totally understand the notion of having families together, and it's the challenge that it causes for us as we look at enrollment.
That's better than I did. I mean, you want it to be fair, and so do we make it fair for families of students that are already in the district, or do you make it fair for families that want to come to our district?
And I will mention there is flexibility around the priorities for district of choice, so that. I know you and I didn't talk about this option, but it is something that the board could look at. There's obviously the state mandated priorities, but the district does have the ability to add other priorities to their district of choice process as well.
But so because, I mean, 2 years ago, we were under CAP in many grades. So a lot of good things happening at our schools and a lot of people wanting to come here. And so when we accept it, say we have 2 children or 3 children, one gets district of choice, they all put in for it, and we get 2 siblings that in the past were tagged along as part of that, and they are inter-district agreements. or transferred, right? Or
Currently.
okay, currently, right? Because they're not district of choice. So then the following year, those siblings have impacted those grades even more so to make it so that it would never happen to get anybody of that unless enrollment changed dramatically. So, right.
In addition, the other challenge that it presents is that if the district of choice sibling is a graduating senior and their siblings are in 7th grade and 8th grade, they no longer have a district of choice sibling to be attached to. And so then lies the question, what school do they attend? So it's a lot of challenges that our intent with seeking legal counsel was to develop policies that we can stand behind and that everyone understands and has less of that slippery slope that we've talked about in the past.
Just one other comment is one of the reasons why we have so many families wanting to come to our district is because of our student-to-teacher ratio. We don't want to keep going so over cap that we end up with 30 kindergartners in a classroom. You know, that was one of the reasons why we set our caps the way we did.
Right, and thank you for mentioning that because I was going to mention that too. As far as like we pride ourselves here at St. Helena Unified for our low class sizes. And I personally would like to keep it that way as far as lower class sizes because I think it's important.
Do we have a ballpark number of how many potential siblings we're speaking about?
We have under 10, so about 8 or 9.
Okay.
That are in right now.
That would be affected by any policy change.
That's current
That
students.
could be affected.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So it sounds to me like we possibly need a couple resolutions to take care of some of these gaps of our current students, at least to the board members. When you look at a child who is district of choice and they're graduating and a sibling is left behind, it would seem to me that left behind and still enrolled in the district currently, but then would no longer the next year be allowed to re-enroll, that we would need a resolution to allow any child who is currently an inter-district transfer to be able to remain in our grades until 12th grade.
Right.
So trustees, you all agree with that concept that we would need, that we are not interested in if a 12th grade, just like your example, if a 12th grader leaves, we have a 7th grader, we're not going to ask a 7th grader to leave the district.
That's correct.
I would be in favor of that.
I would be in favor.
Okay. So
One clarifying question concerning the students who are children of employees.
Right.
Since that is a whole nother
I was going there
pool.
next.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so I was just going to go there first.
All
Okay,
right.
so that was first.
So that's potentially excluding those kids. You're talking about the other children that are enrolled in the district.
Correct.
Correct. That's what I was.
That's what I was thinking. Yes.
Okay.
Right.
And then we're talking about drafting a resolution that has the same requirements as the resolution that we had, that every year they do apply for district of choice.
I think
so
it makes
that-
sense.
Yes,
I mean,
yes, that's
It's consistent.
Right.
so that it's consistent with the other resolution that we made.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right. So now, if I could just transfer to employee children
Okay.
who are not district of choice, but are currently inter-district agreements or how does the board feel that that group should be handled who are not district of choice? So we currently have them under inter-district agreements, and whether they're comfortable with the Allen bill idea Or do we also want, and do we want to put that in there and also a provision? I guess it's up to them if they want, if they're an employee of the district and they move and they don't want to put their child through district of choice, they don't have to, because if they choose to leave the district, then their child would go with them.
Right.
So it's not necessarily mandatory to me that they would have to apply for district of choice.
No, unless they chose to do that
Right,
if they were
right.
leaving.
Right.
Just
That they
like
would
you
have the
said.
option to
That's the way my thinking is. If you're gonna, if you are leaving the district position, but you want your children to stay here, then yes, you go through district of choice.
Okay.
That's what I would, like everybody else.
If they're not residents here.
If they're- right, if they're not right.
residents, yes.
So.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
At least I think so.
And then maybe the one outlier would be if the child is in 12th grade. That they would not move. We would, if the child was a junior when the employee stopped working, that they would be able
to do the 11th and 12th grade.
To finish the 12th
Finish up their
grade
senior year.
in our district.
That already applies?
That already applies.
It doesn't apply in the law, but it's implied in interdistrict and district of choice, so it's not unreasonable to put that into your residency, Allenville parameters.
So is it, with the trustees, are you comfortable with a complete transition, at next year's school year for them, any that are on interdistrict agreements, that we would transfer them to the Allen bill as the residential option to become
Residents.
while they're employed
Right.
within the district?
Right. I would, but my question would be, is there any disadvantage of doing that? Is there any?
From a
Of moving
legal
in, from moving in,
standpoint,
yeah.
no. I think you would just need to make sure the process is made very clear. Obviously, these children are applying annually anyways, so you would just need to come up with the notification that they're now being considered a resident of the district under the Allen bill, and here's the policy. From a financial standpoint, I don't know if that has any impact. I don't know financing all that well, but I think that interdistrict transfer students and resident students are, for the most part, treated the same. So, from a financial.
Well, and it seems from, sorry, Mr. Cinto, go ahead.
Yeah, please.
Mr. Cinto, can you go to Erica's microphone, please?
Just kind of a point of clarification, because you had mentioned in the event that the district elect to abandon district of choice and move on to something else, either sooner or at 2020 or 23, 24. If were we to, thinking about making the process clear.
Sure.
And I just got confused over the last 3 minutes. So in the event that we elected no longer to do district of choice, inter-district agreements could potentially take care of every single situation that we just discussed in writing a resolution for, correct?
Correct. Yes. So if you were to completely eliminate district of choice and just have your inter-district transfers, then you would have the priority for your students of sexual assault and bullying. But then other than that, you could set priorities for all remaining students and set your capacity limits. There's a financial piece obviously involved in that. And there are the parameters around inter-district transfers, but provided that the board is aware of all of that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So then we're looking at maybe rewriting the interdistrict transfer regulation in 2023 when there's no longer district of choice.
So it's another option, and the timing of that, I think, is something that the board could look at now, or it could look to see how does district of choice roll out over the next few years. you know, it's going to be up to you, sort of how you procedurally see that, and whether or not you would like to eliminate district of choice completely. I think that is another option that the district can look at, and go solely under the inter-district transfer process.
And I will remind the board that that's what it was 8 or 9 years ago, and it was very, very challenging because there was no equity, there was no, it was a very difficult program to administer.
And to manage.
Right, and that's what District of Choice gave us, was a lottery system. It set a boundary for us. It allowed us to not make judgment and decisions based on the individual sitting asking versus it was open to everybody.
Right.
So that
was
that's correct.
Thank you for pointing that out, because
Yes.
as you saw in the way I struck out most of that policy, it you know, district of choice is a much more unilateral, equally applied policy practice law, and inter-district transfer is not as well defined, and it allows for a lot more interpretation and wiggle room. So.
That's right, and that's specifically why we went to district of choice 9 years ago or 8 years ago. Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me, and probably in your legal opinion as well, that using the Allen bill is actually a more succinct, nicely bordered policy with less wiggle room and confusion, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, and I guess, trustees, we need to talk about the Allen bill, of whether we're considering district, our own employees, or are we considering district-wide Allen bill? So that would be, I mean, that's certainly the two kind of options there of that. And
do we know what most districts do? Do we have any idea?
well, why don't we talk about the financial ramifications of that?
Yeah. No, I understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think it varies on the district. Obviously, districts that
Sure.
want lots of students have it as broad as possible as the law provides. There are a lot of districts that are impacted or basic aid that don't have it at all. So it varies, but I would say you will want to know how many potential
Right.
children would enroll in your
absolutely.
district before making that decision.
Sure.
And just to further clarify, when she's talking about there are some districts that want a lot of students, those are going to be the districts that fall under the local control accountability plan and the funding
Low
formula.
enrollment. Yeah.
And
Right.
the funding is based on average daily attendance.
Correct.
So Napa Unified may have the Allen bill fully employed for all students because they're an LCFF district.
Correct.
Because the funding comes with them.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah,
The funding doesn't come with them. The funding is based on their district's ADA. So they're not taking it, well, in a sense, they are taking it from another district because that district will have less ADA.
I guess within the district, I was looking at that. So that's all based on the enrollment, right? So if we had lower enrollment, that, you know, it would probably be more able, we'd be able to do it because we'd be able to get more of those students. So, and I know it's super hard to determine what our enrollment's going to look like next year. So, wouldn't it make more sense to see the enrollment for next? Because I know this year it projected that it was going to be lower, and now it's higher. So it's kind of hard. I mean, to make a decision like this for me, or I don't know, or base it on the enrollment and then see which one would kick in, you know, in the following year. But or if there's something that could be done that way. Or does it have to be decided
Well,
now
I think-
prior to knowing the enrollment?
Yeah, I think
versus-
that you've got a good point. I think right now we're in a place where we're overcapping
Right.
a lot. So I don't think it makes sense to expand
No, yeah, of course.
the Allen bill beyond district employees. When we have no more district of choice and we have low enrollment, maybe that's when we start considering. But that's not going to be a problem for a while, I would guess.
So I saw a lot of heads go up and down about an Allen bill that it would only be just district employees. I just want to confirm that that's what I'm seeing.
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
Erica, do you want to put the slide back up that shows the enrollment from Andy's PowerPoint? That will show.
Another point of
Allen Bill effective, I'm sorry, 1920 for employees who work 10 hours or more per week for the entire school year.
Good, I'm good. Lauren, would there be anything to preclude us from authoring language around interdistrict agreement that was resembling in principle district of choice that would essentially clean up the notion of it being more equally applied and number caps, those kind of things? Or is it purely
So you're
based
going
in
back to the idea of if the district were to eliminate district of choice entirely? Yeah, I mean, I have districts, I represent districts that have very good working, clean interdistrict transfer policies that seem to work for them. So, I mean, I think it's the practical application, given the community and the population of the community, is obviously varying for each district, and so it's hard to say whether you, even if you had those policies in place, that there still wouldn't be concerns and issues that came up in the past. But I will say that I have seen it in policy and in practice rolled out very cleanly with no issues.
And as a clarifying point, Ms. Stubbs and I have talked about this notion at great length. And in the event that district of choice is ultimately eliminated by the state and there is no longer any funding source that comes with it, then as opposed to jumping right back to the classic IDA process, that would be a process that we would investigate and potentially develop.
I had a question. In the past, you said 9 years ago it was IDA only. Did that have any other priorities that were set by the board, or it was just, or as she was not recommending, but as she talked about?
Yeah, it actually, there was you were supposed to be a super parent. It had a whole bunch of agreements that the parents had to do. They had to go work certain things. It was a list of about 9 or 10 things that you signed and said you would do as a parent if your child was doing it. It really, my recollection was the equity piece. So it was kind of who you knew in the district determined exactly whether you got in or not, and it just never seemed very equitable. And anyway,
it didn't favor families where both parents worked, and it didn't favor families that might be a lower income.
And part of that as well is where the parent that was in, they would have to actually report like their volunteer times and things to the district. So it was there was a lot of stipulations kind of around it. So that leads to my question, and I'm sorry if you have more questions.
No, that's good.
So as far as that, if we discontinue district of choice, or we have to or it goes away, whichever. Would we be able to put together an IDA program where it's unbiased then? Or would we be able to do that?
Yeah, so over the last 10 years, there's been quite a bit of litigation around the biased procedures by districts in admitting students. So because of that, the code has changed, but we also have quite a bit of case law to rely upon in sort of what criteria we now can use as priorities. And it is going to be very generic, uniformly applied criteria. It is not going to have anything to do with one individual student's parents' abilities versus another.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Madrigal, we've covered cases for whom students are their parents are avid tutors. We've covered the cases for students who are siblings of DOC, and we've covered employees. Are we missing any particular scenario?
No, because the other two options, the 11th and 12th graders, that remains the same, and the military families, that was the other option. The only other that's been stricken is the extraordinary circumstances.
I have one quick question. Is there any kind of criteria for foster youth?
No.
Okay. I asked that just because I know that the local controlled accountability plan, there's a lot of things around foster youth right now as well.
No, I mean, not for the district of choice process, yeah.
There's different policies that address homeless, McKinney-Vento.
Correct, yeah, so sorry, yeah, to clarify, that's not to say those students don't have other means of getting in, it's just through the inter-district or district of choice policy that those aren't set forth criteria in those code sections.
So we do have a situation where we have, just to make things more confusing, we have memorandums of understanding with neighboring districts with respect to special education. So some of these students that are attending our school are attending under the memorandum of understanding with the other districts. These children also have siblings. So under the district of choice procedure, where siblings of district of choice students have priority, how, when we want to keep families together, so
yeah, it may take me looking at those, because are those special ed students under the MOUs treated as inter-district kids, or are they just being brought in under the MOU and then, but you are giving priority to their siblings?
We are not.
Oh, okay.
We are not.
Oh, okay.
So that's the whole thing. I'm wondering if we could clarify that so there's no misunderstanding, because we are trying to find ways to keep families together, yet at the same time it's not quite clear.
Yeah. Right. I was going to say, I mean, it's hard because there are so many different means of admitting students through the district. So it may be more of an internal practice of let's better identify these kids as they come into the district so we know, okay, this kid is going to be a district of choice kid, or this kid, very clearly identifying how we're classifying them, so that it's not, so the implication isn't if the student's attending here through because we're the service provider for them, somehow their siblings are now entitled to enroll as a priority under another policy.
So exactly, do we need to address our policies because of that, or?
We can look at the MOU, I think, is the place to address that, to outline in the MOU that it's for that child only. It is an IEP decision, and it can change from one year to the next as to who is going to provide the services for that child. So, Ms. Stubbs, if we can clarify that information on the MOU, and it may already be there without my recollection.
Yeah, and I think that if you were to call me and ask me that question, I would say, well, those students are not, they're not coming in through a transfer, so that's not going to trigger any of the transfer priorities or anything to that effect. But I think internally, obviously putting it in the MOU or doing other things to make sure that that's clear, I don't see an issue with that.
So I was just thinking about our sibling situation one more time. Now, so are we continuing? It's the siblings that are here now that remain here, and then as we move forward, then the siblings don't follow. Is that what we're talking about?
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that's what we were talking about.
Current students.
DOC siblings.
Siblings,
yes.
right.
Okay, perfect.
So just looking at this and making sure. So if we were to adopt your changes in policy, and I think I came up with possibly 3 resolutions that would cover the Allen, the current IDA sibling students of DOCs, and the AVID as requested by the board. That those 3 resolutions, in addition to what you've already written for us, would present us a very tight and clean policy to start for the following year. Is that correct?
Just to clarify, Lauren, if we move the Allen bill into a part of our board policies, would we need a resolution, or would that simply be a shift in board policy?
So that would just be, I mean, the draft I gave you of the residency policy includes this recommended language. That is sufficient in of itself. You wouldn't need, what the resolution really is to deal with to address the impact that those policy changes are making. So addressing the DOC siblings in a resolution and addressing the how you would be treating the Allen bill, the transition of kids who are employees' children from IDT to Allen bill would be what would be set forth in that other resolution.
So it's three resolutions, potentially.
Did I just really confuse you?
You did.
Sorry.
So let me clarify. So we know that we have a draft resolution on the table right now for our students who are impacted as a result of the Avid tutor shift. What I heard today was a recommendation for a resolution for siblings of students who are currently DOC. Currently, in the inter-district transfer, we allow employees' students to attend. If we remove that line and we add the Allen bill into the board policy language, do we need a resolution to address employees' children?
No, because your decision is to have effective next school year. I think we would just want to maybe add some language to the Allen bill saying effective for the 1920 school year, so it's clear that process, and then internally the process you choose to use to transfer those kids over into Allen bill status could be done without having done through a resolution.
Just as you're talking about this subject, I just want to put some clarification out there. For homeless and foster youth, they do fall under different CDE policies, but we have approximately 9 students that fall under that. So when you're looking at caps and numbers that are coming in and talking about, district transfers, just wanted you to have that information.
So those students are currently under IDA? No.
They can enroll in any district within the state of California if they fall under foster youth or homeless.
That's right. Okay, that's right.
And unfortunately, given their situation, their enrollment is volatile. They may or may not be here for any period of time.
Okay, I'm looking at the trustees. Anything else? Everybody's head nods? Maria, all good? Okay. So it sounds like 2 resolutions and the updated policies.
Correct.
And I'm looking over at Erica, who's head nodding as well. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you very much. It's been very enlightening, and I know I've used the wrong term 5 times already. So, and I keep reading this stuff over and over. So at this point,
I just realized one thing. So that would be for the students that have siblings. Those are siblings who are currently enrolled in the district, not prospective students.
Correct. And to inform all of our board members, because of this study session and because of the potential impact on students who are current siblings and potentially students who have applied and are waiting to hear from Erica, we did send a memo to all families who have either applied for District of Choice for future, are here on District of Choice and have siblings. We sent a memo to quite a number of families to make sure that they knew that we were talking about this and that the potential of changes to policy would occur for effective the 1920 school year.
Just as a point of clarification, if you're doing language around that, because I know that there's families that are currently in our district but have moved or are moving and have applied for District of Choice for next year. So when you're saying currently enrolled, they that their siblings would get in over the top of students who are higher up on the district of choice list. Does that make sense? So for this example, there's two families who their children are currently enrolled in school. They're both not going to be in the district next year. One has more than one child, and one of the children is in a grade level that they will get in. The other children are in grade levels where they will not get in. Meanwhile, the other family just has the one kid who's in a grade level where he won't get in, but was drawn first. But you know what I'm saying? Is that making sense? So will the sibling take the place of the student who was drawn first?
From a priority standpoint for the following year, potentially.
Right. That's what I'm wondering.
So,
okay.
If they choose to apply, because it's an annual application process.
And I do recall that we've already made the changes to continue out to the end of the school year rather than the break in the school year.
You're talking about families who move out of the district.
Yes.
Previously, we were notifying them that they would be disenrolled at the end of a grading period, and we have modified that to take them out through the end of the school year. Yes.
Okay, seeing more head nods. Another round of questions, and thank you very much for bringing up, because it's all individual cases in it that's what makes it so hard. So at this point, if I don't, thank you very much, Lauren, so much for sharing. Is there a motion to adjourn the study session?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the study session.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay.